Did your mother come from Ireland? Aye, from County Cork. County Kerry, did you say? Or Galway Bay?
Now we'll take you there. Those lilting place names that roll off the tongue like a warm raindrop. Those counties celebrated with sweet tea sentiment in Tin Pan Alley ballads that make up today's Republic of Ireland. Seeing it on a map, this island looks as though it might be breaking away from the British Isles to make it on its own in the rough, grey Atlantic. The high kingdoms of Ulster, Leinster, Munster and Connacht, Aran in Gaelic, and to us, the Republic of Ireland, taking up 80% of the island. Not very big, 150 miles across and 315 miles from top to bottom, supporting 3.5 million souls.
Céad míle fáilte go héireann.
Welcome to Ireland. The fabled Ring of Kerry. Cork, site of the Blarney Stone, which pilgrims suffer backache and vertigo to kiss. Wexford, ancestral home of John F. Kennedy. Gaelic Galway. And the bleak Isles of Aran. Wild Connemara. Sligo, in the breath of poets. Donegal, the Atlantic lapping at its doorstep. And fair Dublin town, the friendliest capital on earth. The golf lovers' Ireland. And especially the horse lovers' Ireland. The poets' Ireland. For this is a land of poets and wordsmiths, where eloquence is more highly regarded than affluence.
So that we try to feed a habit for everything, until the ego puppets, the militaries, mirror our own warring face. Do a little peace.
Named after the island's longest river, Shannon Airport is the gateway to the Irish Republic when jetting over the Atlantic. This country boasts of some 900 castles, and just a mossy stone's throw from the airport rises a huge hulk called Blarney that's been rehammered to its medieval glories. Clamped onto the castle bridge is Durty Nellies Pub, dating from 1620. But County Clare has more to offer than Nelly's hospitality. The cliffs of Moher, a 5-mile palisade of sheer rock rising out of the sea. And the Alway Cave, with stalactites 1,000,000 years in the sculpting. The bones of hibernating bears have been found here. Bears have been extinct in Ireland for more than 1,000 years. 15 miles to the west of the airport stand the walls of Limerick. Limerick is the 4th largest city in the Republic, and a familiar name to anyone who ever made a witty verse in English.
There was a fair Irish city that lent its name to a ditty.
On one side of the Shannon, the city is called English Town. On the other side, Irish Town. Nearby Adair is one of the loveliest villages in the land. This forceful piece of sculpture is of Daniel O'Connell, and it stands on a street in Limerick that's been named after him. O'Connell is memorialized throughout the Republic as the Liberator. But liberator of whom? Who then are these irrepressible people who populate the Republic? What dazzling concoction of wizardry and whiskey and the wee folk bubbled up as the Irish race?
Long, long ago, beyond the misty space of twice 1,000 years, in Aran old there dwelt a mighty race taller than Roman spears.
Sure, and there were leprechauns and bog spirits more than 5,000 years ago. When Bronze Age men buried their dead here at Newgrange in County Meath. Then the Celts, fierce but canny, invaded from Central Europe and took over the island. They were fighters, the Celts, and splendid horsemen. Here on the hill of Tara, also in County Meath, their high kings held every third year great assemblies. For 2,000 years, Tara was Ireland's political powerhouse and most sacred pagan shrine. Now came another conqueror, but of a different sort. Patrick was born in Roman Britain and had been shunted to Ireland as a slave when he was only 16. He somehow got away. In the year 432, he returned as a missionary armed with the cross and the word. Here on the Hill of Slain, he lit a paschal fire and proclaimed his mission to the pagan Irish. The Rock of Cashel in County Tipperary had been a place of worship going back to the Gaelic beginnings. Kings were crowned here. Here Patrick baptized the High King of Munster and the royal family. And it was on Cashel that Patrick likened the Trinity to the three leaves of a shamrock. The new faith brush-fired over the land. Monasteries arose, great depositories of Greco-Roman and Christian learning. Irish monks, the most scholarly in Christendom, fanned out over Europe. More invaders. In AD 795, Norsemen swooped down on Ireland in their long, dragon-prowed ships. Their minds were on booty, not books. They ravaged the monks, the monasteries, and the pretty colleens. Their raiding bled on for 2 centuries. But the Vikings weren't all fire and broadsword. They settled down to become traders and founded the cities of Dublin, Wexford, Cork, and Limerick. Strongbow the Norman was the island's next conqueror in 1171. The following year, King Henry II of England staked out Ireland with Norman castles. So began the entrenchment of English rule. Erie. A moonscape, perhaps? No, it isn't the pocked surface of the moon. It's the Burren in County Clare. As bleak and forbidding as the somber history that it calls to mind. In the 1600s, the Catholic majority of Ireland revolted against their English masters. With 20,000 troops, Oliver Cromwell vowed to drive the rebels to hell or Connacht. By 1652, he'd massacred a third of Ireland's Catholics. Those spared were sold into slavery in the West Indies. On his march over the Burren, the complaint was heard, "Not enough wood to hang a man, not enough water to drown him, and not enough clay to cover his corpse." Yes, the Irish prayed for a liberator. Sadly, a century passed before he emerged. Of him, we'll see more. Going around in circles can be a joy, if you're circling the ring of Kerry. If it's clockwise you're going, then it's south on the Kenmore Road from Killarney, through Killarney National Park, to Derrynane, to St. Finans and Ballyskellig's Bays, and rounding it out at Killorglin. About 110 miles in all, the most traveled scenic route in Ireland. If you detour via the Connor Pass, the ring can be bent northward to include Tralee and Ballybunion. Killarney National Park, Ireland's own lake country. Miles and miles of glorious lakes, sparkling under restless, changing skies. McGillicuddy's Peaks, the highest range of mountains in the land. Moorlands. Ocean currents keep the climate here mild, making for lush ferns and mosses, forming homes for leprechauns. This park holds the largest growth of natural woodlands remaining in Ireland. It's ruins now, but he was born here. In County Kerry in 1775, Daniel O'Connell, the liberator. His ancestral home is here at Derrynane. He was a powerful orator, O'Connell. In 1828, he was elected to Parliament, but he was not allowed to take the seat he had won because he was Catholic. But the movement he championed was of such force that it scared London. O'Connell was elected again, and this time seated in the House of Commons. Brilliantly, he accomplished the emancipation of Ireland's Catholics. Then he set himself to repealing the Act of Union between Ireland and Great Britain. O'Connell was committed to reform and to activism within the law. But as a leader, he was dedicated to change without violence. But when he died in 1847, Ireland had yet to win its full freedom from Great Britain. Rough, dramatic, the Dingle Peninsula jutting bravely into the wild Atlantic. These waters are a graveyard for ships. A recent find was the wreck of the Santa Maria de la Rosa, a ship of the Spanish Armada that foundered in Blasset Sound. Dingle itself is a fishing town, lively, with plenty of tasty seafood. Today's Dinglers reside in dwellings undistinguishable from those of the rest of Ireland. But their ancient ancestors settled down in these unmortared beehive huts. They're called clachans. With tourism, there are options other than a beehive hut or a homey B&B. Some tourists see Dingle from Romany-like caravans, in imitation of a peculiar Irish breed. These young vacationers are from Sweden. They've rented a barrel-top wagon. They're adopting the lifestyle of a people once called tinkers, but who prefer to be called travelers. They're part of the landscape, the traveling people. About 20,000 of them wandering in wagons and vans. Nomads with their animals. But note, they are not gypsies. No one's really certain where they came from. No one has accounted for their language, called cant. For these people speak a language of their own. Whatever their origins, these traveling people have a rich and different culture. Tralee is County Kerry's biggest town, and it's never busier than in late summer when the Festival of Kerry is held. It draws from around the world. Hibernian ladies from several continents. Because the world over, most everyone is familiar with the words and melody of the Rose of Tralee. Who is most like the Rose of the song? Lovely young women from all over Ireland and the world are here to prove that they are, and to match charms in a competition for the festival crown. Among the Irish counties, there's a colleen from Chicago. They're here from all over the globe, Melbourne, New South Wales, Toronto, Texas, California. It's Ireland's biggest bash. Ballybunion means town of the sapling in Gaelic, but to the Irish it means holidays, seaside holidays. It lays sunbathing on a coastline of sandy beaches and jagged cliffs. Old Lick Castle is a landmark of the grounds for which Ballybunion is best known, its golf courses. There are two 18-hole courses here. Champions say that the old course is one of the 10 toughest in the world. It's a wild place, a terrain as it was 1,000 years ago, where River Shannon meets the ocean. Tall grasses cover dunes that pitch and roll. Golfers, welcome to Ballybunion. In listing the fabled counties of the Irish Republic, it's usually Cork that comes first to mind. Cork on the Celtic Sea. Toward the Irish Sea are Cork's easterly neighbors, County Waterford and County Wexford. Cork, a coastline of jagged rock with bays deep enough for the big ships, inviting towns and villages folded into green hills and fields of fertile farmland. What County Cork is best known for is the most celebrated chunk of rock in the world, a 5-foot block of limestone in the parapet of Blarney Castle. Elizabeth I of England unwittingly christened it the Blarney Stone. The Queen had commanded Dermot McCarthy to hand over this castle. But McCarthy kept putting her off with sweet talk. Exasperated, the Queen exclaimed,
"Oh, that man's nothing but Blarney."
Today's pilgrims climb to the height of the battlements, empty their pockets of loose valuables, and clinging precariously to guardrails, lie down and arch back to kiss the surface of the magic stone. The payoff? The gift of eloquence. It's the second city. That's the city of Cork by the River Liffey, with a continental air and a population of 140,000. A hilly, bustling, testy kind of town, with waterways all around. Cork citizens have a fierce sense of identity. It's said of Cork,
"It's God's own place and the devil's own people."
Just 15 minutes from the city of Cork stands Cobh. Its harbor handles the big ships. Cobh's maritime history is notable, and often, in human terms, strangely tragic. Cobh was the Titanic's last port of call before it sailed into its tragedy. Surveying Cobh today offers no clue to the place of the potato in its history, but here the port and the potato, or one of them, are fused. After the discovery of the Americas, an edible tuber made its way from the New to the Old World. Sir Walter Raleigh returned from his Virginia expedition with potato tubers, which were planted here on the grounds of Castle Matrix, the first grown in Ireland. The Irish peasant had been dreadfully undernourished. Then the spud made its entrance into his life. Here is a nutritious staple that could be grown in abundance on small plots of land. Plain folk and the potato. The peasant's daily diet improved. 6 pounds of potatoes and a pint of milk. The population increased. Gratefully, they might have prayed, "Give us this day our daily potatoes." Potatoes were life. Then it struck in 1845. A blight. The potato crop failed, and failed, and failed, and failed again. A great hunger fell over Ireland. Unable to pay the rents to their London landlords, Irish underdogs were driven off the land. The hungry ate grass. They died of starvation and dysentery. They died crawling in the streets, screaming for food. Of a population of 8.5 million, 1 million starved to death. Fleeing the famine, another million emigrated. For many of them, Cobh was their last sight of Ireland. They scrambled for steerage in what came to be called coffin ships. Some survived to build up their blood again in Britain, in Australia, in the New World. Emigrant ships calling at Cobh continued in the 20th century, into the years of World War I. Of the busiest of those crowded liners was the Lusitania. Then, in 1915, while steaming past Kinsale after embarking from Cobh, the Lusitania was torpedoed without warning by a submarine of the Imperial German Navy. 1,198 human beings perished. Several hundred of the victims were buried in the cemetery of the 12th century church of St. Multos. Today there's a monument to those who perished, a reminder that the splendid port city of Cobh has been fraught with tragedy. But it's also been a port of hope. From the degrading hunger, from the coffin ships and the stifling steerage emerged the survivors. They peopled the burgeoning cities of North America, New York, Chicago, Boston. At first they just managed to survive. In time, they prevailed. Dunganstown, County Wexford, Republic of Ireland. In 1848, a lad named Kennedy left this homestead, a thatched cottage at the time, to try his luck in America. In 1963, Kennedy's great-grandson made a pilgrimage to his ancestral home.
So now my wife and I prepare for a new administration and for a new baby. Thank you.
The Irish loved U.S. President John Fitzgerald Kennedy. They felt that he was one of their own. In his name, they've created a living memorial, the John F. Kennedy Arboretum, 8 miles from New Ross in the southeast corner of Ireland. Here grow trees and shrubs and plants in abundance, many donated from around the world. In a larger sense, this forest commemorates the great fulfillment after the Great Hunger. The name Waterford, as in County Waterford, rings throughout the world's boutiques, from the elegant crystal produced at Waterford City's glassworks. It's the largest glass factory in the world. 3,000 visitors a week watch as the ingredients are mixed, shaped, and with consummate skill, cut in the unique patterns that are a hallmark of Waterford. Where swans patrol them, the waters of Loch Corrib are calm. But these waters surge wildly when spilling into Galway Bay. Between Loch Corrib and the sea, they're thick with salmon. In this most sheltered corner of the bay is Galway, the most Irish city in Ireland. Though its imposing cathedral is strictly 20th century, Galway is old. Its beginnings were humble, a harbor and a hangout for fishermen. But by the 13th century, it had become sufficiently prosperous to enclose itself within thick walls to keep out the wild Irish. Then as now, Galway bustled. Trade, Market Street, Shop Street, Buttermilk Lane. Once swaggering Spaniards strutted up and down these streets because the Southwesterlies brought ships here from the ports of Spain. This was the largest parish church in medieval Ireland, dedicated to St. Nicholas, patron of travelers by land and sea. There's an intriguing old tale about this church. Christopher Columbus docked in Galway Harbor and prayed in this church before embarking westward in the Santa Maria. Given Galway's place on sea routes, the tale isn't as far-fetched as it may seem. Today, Lynch Castle is a bank, but during the city's heyday, it was a splendiferous mansion occupied by the Lynches, one of 14 powerful families or tribes that ruled Galway. Indeed, it was known as the city of the tribes in those days. Bank or castle? It's one of the finest old townhouses in Ireland. This is a monument to a storyteller, a Galway-born storyteller who wrote exclusively in the Irish language. Pádraig Ó Connemara. Oh, there were those who raised an eyebrow when a monument was erected. Old Paddy was never in one place very long. As a matter of fact, he was a bit of a hobo, with a weakness for the bottle, but his writings are much loved. Like Ó Connemara, Galway is, and lives, a folk tale. An even deeper thrust into the Celtic twilight. Straddling the mouth of Galway Bay are the three islands collectively known as Aran, strangely remote, in distance and in time. They're treeless. Atlantic gales have stripped them bare. Wild and lonely, yet human beings have eked out a living here for 50 centuries. Life is hard for these islanders. These fields, which the islanders who farm them hopefully refer to as gardens, are marked off by irregular dry stone walls. These boundaries go back for generations, for centuries. Here, human communities, little worlds unto themselves, subsist on potatoes, milk, and fish, and there are wildflowers. The people here are steeped in folkways. Irish Gaelic is their workaday language. Out of politeness, they will speak English to visitors. This is the honored kind of boat used by the locals, the Cora, made of laths and tarred canvas. Fishermen sail far out into the open seas in these craft. The stuff of legends, these islanders, a kindly but fearless people. These are the folk of Synge's haunting play, Riders to the Sea, and of American filmmaker Robert Flaherty's masterpiece, The Man of Aran. Aran beckons visitors seeking a way of life rooted in the timeless, the unchanging. You can explore on foot its pristine white sand beaches and probe the tide pools for what the sea has left behind. You can explore its tiny harbors and visit the graves of fishermen unknown to you, but in this place of crying winds and quiet courage, they're somehow kindred. You can traverse its stony fields in a light two-wheeled carriage. They're called Jerusalem Jeeps by the locals. You can breathe its briny, unpolluted air while pumping a bike. You can meander through its tidy towns where accommodations are family run. You can browse through its shops for heavy sweaters or white sheep's wool, traditional Aran knitwear. Women of Aran used to knit these sweaters in family patterns and aid in identifying the bodies of fishermen who had drowned. This is the westernmost point of the islands. The next landfall is New York City. Though battered by the sea, Aran, on the outmost rim of Western Europe, remains untouched by the turbulence of the times we live in.
Living on the island is like living in no place on earth. It's the only place to be.
Connemara, a name that rolls off the tongue like honey. It's the name given to the western part of County Galway, stretching from Loch Corrib to the Atlantic. Landmark mountains brooding over it are the 12 Bends. It's a haunted land. Moors. Hidden lakes seeming to stretch into infinity. Lonely heaths, boglands, meandering streams, cataracts, bays as deep as the profound timelessness of Connemara itself, seas of waving grass. It's a place of few people, but with multitudes of memories, haunting memories of giants and dwarfs and warrior kings who ruled when this was an ancient Gaelic kingdom. Connemara enchants. It is more than sights and sounds. It's a way of feeling. Lying at the head of Clifton Bay is the market town of Clifton. Population, just over 1,000. Yet it's referred to as the capital of Connemara. This place marks an event. On this bog, just south of Clifton, two daring pilots crash-landed their biplane on a flight that took off from St. John's in Newfoundland. There were William Alcock and Arthur Whitten Brown. That was on the 15th of June, 1919, the first transatlantic flight, before Lindbergh. It is fitting that it is in Connemara that those primal rhythms rising from the depths of the Irish soul are being served. Malachi Kearns makes drums, a tambourine-shaped drum called a bowran that's used in making traditional Irish music. With great care, a frame is shaped and sanded. Skins, goat and deer the most favored, are cured in lime and mixed with ingredients that are a guarded secret of every bowran maker. Skins are soaked, scraped, After the skin has been stretched for 2 or 3 days, it's transferred to the beechwood frame of a bowran. In times past, a sheep's leg was used as a beater. Today, beaters are made of fine woods. In the hands of a good player, the bowran can be exciting, evoking an ageless response, and a joyous one. The region languors into summer. Then, on the third Thursday in August, it bursts into high spirits with the Connemara Pony Show. Connemara is famous for its ponies. Some of these ponies seem as wild as the landscape. Legend has it that they're descended from Andalusian horses carried on board ships of the Spanish Armada. Horses that swam to the safety of these shores when their ships were sunk from under them. The Irish love horses. A good, fast horse and a rider with pluck are sport. And a social occasion as well. At any one time in Ireland, there are about 6,000 horses in training, some 28 race courses, and over 1 million fans a year. The toniest of equestrian events takes place from the first Tuesday of August through the following Saturday. The Royal Dublin Horse Show. There's an Englishness about this Dublin event, recalling the days when the Union Jack, and not the flag of the Irish Republic, flew over these showgrounds at Ballsbridge. Another event, the arrival of the President of the Republic. There's a contradiction here. The Irish fought long and hard against British kings and queens to become a republic and elect a president as its head. Yet this president presides over a royal horse show. Oh well, the Irish aren't ones to let a contradiction stand in the way of a good time. Perhaps even more than by the strains of their national anthem, today's Irish are united by the sound of a horse's hooves striking lightning from the earth. Following the coastline north to the enchanted landscape of County Sligo, this is Yeats country, and more northerly still in Ulster, County Donegal, buffeted by the sea. Haunting is the word for County Sligo. A rare other world of secret places, of specters and spirits, where belief in the supernatural is taken for granted. Sligo is old, staggeringly old. At Carramore sprawls a vast Bronze Age burial ground, going back 40 centuries. Cairns, dolmens. It was in Sligo that Nobel Prize-winning poet William Butler Yeats spent his summers as a youth. Here his imagination caught fire. Here at Loch Gill, where Yeats probed the soul of Ireland's Celtic past. Rhymes more than their rhyming tell of things discovered in the deep, where only bodies laid asleep. Yeats hated old age. Yet he grew old. He hated the idea of dying. Yet he died. He's buried in the churchyard at Drumcliff, under a piece of Sligo limestone chiseled with an epitaph that he himself had written. Cast a cold eye on life, on death. Horsemen, pass by. Where there are sheep, there's wool. And Donegal is one of the best places in Ireland to buy tweeds. The Atlantic pounding at its doorstep, County Donegal has launched fishing fleets and the Fighting O'Donnell clan into the maelstrom of Irish history. Respect for the sea is profound. Independence, fierce. Irish is spoken here. More people speak the Irish language in Donegal than in any other county in the Republic. But the Donegal dialect has much in common with the Gaelic spoken in the Scottish Highlands. Indeed, Donegal has strong ties with Scotland. In Christian times, it came to be known as the Blessed Well, but Doon Well is pagan. Pilgrims wind bits of clothing and personal effects onto nearby bushes, masking the foliage with frippery. Then they circle Doon Well ritualistically. The belief in the curative powers of the well's waters goes deeper than the well itself, down to the Druids of Donegal. The blessing of the fleet at Killybegs is more in keeping with the Irish faith. Killybegs, meaning the little churches, is a natural harbor in a sheltering inlet of Donegal Bay, and an important port in the herring trade. The fishing fleet merits the blessing of a bishop for calm waters and a full harvest from the sea. Eastern Ireland, facing the Irish Sea, abounds in sights just an hour or so from the capital. But the dearest sight is Dublin itself, full of churches, pubs, and pluck. 73 miles southwest of Dublin is a jewel on the banks of the River Nore. Kilkenny was once the capital of the Irish Confederation. Though its population stands at only 10,000, Little Kilkenny insists on being regarded as a full-grown city. City or town, it's a treasure of medieval haunts. Dublin's neighboring county Wicklow is graced by the refinements, the tastes and fancies of another age. Powerscourt. This is one of the last great formal gardens of the old world. Flowing from east to west is the River Liffey. In its meanderings, its waters become musky and as green as Ireland itself. From its banks and from an overflow of history sprang Dublin town, Dublin's fair city. But it all started with the river. In heartfelt gratitude to the river, today's city fathers commissioned this magnificent fountain. Dubliners promptly christened it the Floozy in the Jacuzzi. including suburbs. Seat of Dublin County, province of Leinster. True, it's been a capital only since 1921, but it's the one capital Ireland's ever had. And it's the most hospitable bustle bug on earth. Bridges link the city's north to south. This arching cast iron footpath's called the Halfpenny, recalling the time when a halfpenny was charged for a crossing. Centuries ago, the 9th to be exact, there was no city here. Then Vikings invaded and built a stronghold at a place called Dark Pool, Duv Linn in Gaelic. The name stuck. The town the Vikings built, which had been buried for centuries, stood between Christchurch and the river. During the 1970s, it was excavated. Remains of houses, walls. It was though an engulfed town surfaced before our eyes. Shields, axe heads, combs, bowls and spoons, coins, and locks, masks. As well as being marauders, Vikings were merchants. Dubliners can't resist breathing some high spirits into their city's murky beginnings. In a recreated Viking village at the excavation site, players with a bent for history portray their ancestral Dublin Danes.
Of course, there's always me shellfish, cockles and
Reed! Do you hear me talking to you? These people don't want fish now. Will you run along and...
They do want
What do you
fish.
mean they do?
You see, they all eat fish.
You've never met these people before.
Every single one
How
of
do
them.
you
They
don't
all
know
eat
these
fish.
people?
I know by looking at them.
You know
they eat
by
fish.
looking at
I
them.
do,
Don't be such a stupid old woman.
I'm not
Will you
being
go
stupid.
along out
No,
of
I'm
that?
supposed
Go
to tell-
along there,
No.
please.
Here, the visitor joins in a reliving of early Dublin life in the housing of the times. Historically, these Vikings became Christians and intermarried with the Irish. In the 12th century, Normans arrived by way of England, but they established power only over a strip of land on the east coast known as the Pale. Anything outside of it was referred to as beyond the Pale. Dublin Castle was begun by England's King John, and medieval Dublin grew up around it. Starting with the reign of the First Elizabeth, it was England's foothold in the territorial conquest of the Irish island. As seen today, Dublin Castle wears architectural add-ons of 18th century elegance. The 18th century saw Dublin's golden age. The cornerstone of Parliament House was laid in 1728. Though one of the statues that ornament it represents wisdom, it was folly for the Irish Parliament to vote itself out of existence as it did in 1801, when its befuddled MPs passed the Act of Union with Great Britain. From then on, Ireland was governed from London. Dedicated in the 12th century, St. Patrick's Cathedral has had several faceliftings since. It's the largest church in Ireland, standing on the site where Patrick himself baptized 500 pagan Irish into the faith. Oliver Cromwell had shown his contempt for the Irish by stabling his horses inside. Starting in 1713, these sacred precincts were a seat of literary assaults, of razor-sharp tracts that slashed into the injustice of the times. That is, for the 35 years that Jonathan Swift was dean here. Swift is renowned for his classic Gulliver's Travels, but his brilliant irony was simply too much for the readers of his day. He's buried here in St. Pat's. Trinity College was founded by England's Elizabeth I on the site of a monastery that had been sacked by her father, Henry VIII. In the 1750s, it got a facelift. For over 4 centuries, Trinity College has been a beehive of higher learning and endless talk. It's a 40-acre campus. Trinity's library houses Old Ireland's highest artistic achievement, the Book of Kells. Kells. These 9th century renderings of the Gospels are bound into 4 volumes. Each day, with loving care, another page of dazzling beauty is turned for the visitor to behold. The busy O'Connell Street Bridge couples the city's nitty-gritty north side with its gentrified south side. The dominant colossus is of the man himself, Daniel O'Connell, the Liberator. Parnell's remembered in a city square named after him. Charles Stewart Parnell championed Home Rule for Ireland in the British House of Commons. Parnell's shining career was tarnished when it came out that he'd been carrying on for years with a woman named Kitty, who was married to a Captain O'Shea. The American Revolution has its Liberty Bell, the French its Bastille. But only Dublin could turn this granite hulk of a post office into a shrine to liberty. A shrine consecrated by Irish blood. 1916, the Monday after Easter. Dublin's main post office was besieged by a band of patriots, just 150 of them, some armed awkwardly with old rifles. They were teachers, intellectuals, idealists, talkers, not terrorists. From the steps they boldly proclaimed an Irish Republic, complete independence from Great Britain. Most of the Dubliners who bothered to listen refused to take them seriously, but there was looting. British soldiers were sent in, arrests were made. What had been an outburst of bluster suddenly became grim. On the 3rd day of May, leader Porrick Pierce and 2 others were shot by a British firing squad. The next day, more were executed. Then more, and more, and more. Things changed. As the poet Yeats wrote, all changed utterly. A terrible beauty is born. The rebels were no longer comic. They had become martyrs. Those firing squads triggered half a decade of civil war. Then, on December 5, 1921, 800 years of Englishmen trying to impose royal rule on their Irish neighbors came to a halt. At last, Ireland was free. This scarred old building is still in use as a post office. Fashionable Dublin still basks in the glow of a vanished age. It's a city for strolling, a city of graceful squares and the welcoming doors of Dublin. Richly painted Georgian entrances radiating fan lights and embellished with polished brass. Some of these doorways lead to the cradles of famous and sometimes infamous writers. The poet Yeats was born at number 5 Sandymount Avenue. Notorious for his rapier wit, Oscar Wilde was born at number 21 Westland Row. Though Dublin is something more than a bat's flight from Transylvania, novelist Bram Stoker was born here. He wrote Dracula. George Bernard Shaw first learned the ABCs of the language he used so brilliantly at number 33 Sing Street. Here, on Leinster Lawn, is where Shaw played hooky as a schoolboy, the National Gallery, housing a collection of splendid works, Rembrandt, Velázquez, Goya, El Greco. The National Gallery was the place to which Bernard Shaw owed his early education, so he claimed. Shaw, whose plays had tickled audiences into a higher social consciousness, left a third of his estate to the National Gallery. Well, that's considerable, taking into account the royalties from such works as Pygmalion, which was made into one of the biggest money-making musicals in theatrical history, My Fair Lady. There's a backdoor Dublin, too, north of the Liffey. This is the grubby Dublin of Sean O'Casey, master of the tragic comic in his plays The Plough and the Stars and Juno and the Paycock.
Parrots are onions, they're £2 for 30 pence.
Brash.
I hope I don't break that bloody camera.
I don't know.
I generally do.
Lively.
Would you not bring him over and get his face washed?
And buoyed with wit as colorful as its stalls of produce. The down-to-earth Dublin of the Moore Street Market.
Who's got the sense of humour?
We all have. We all have. We all have. Just one day at a time for us.
This venerable market is manned by weathered Amazons. Crones from the Cabbage Patch, who through more decades than they dare add up have seen it all.
I'm too yuppie for her. Madonna. Say Madonna.
From the lush, youthful strawberry, all juice and sugar, to the dusty potato, as old and lumpy as the earth.
30 a pound, they're the sound tomatoes.
That house painter turned word painter, Brendan Behan, knew well the Moore Street Market. Its cheek, its smells, its cadences. Behan had turned to the stage, as had so many other Irish writers before him, helping to make the Dublin theatre scene one of the most dazzling in the world. The Abbey. Out of the strivings for independence grew Ireland's national theatre. The Abbey is a shrine to the Irish flair for words, for the tragicomic. Much of the credit for the Abbey's founding goes to the remarkable Lady Augusta Gregory. She shared the theater's directorship, and she herself wrote some 40 plays. Downstairs, the Abbey feeds a sibling, the Peacock Theatre. The Peacock delves into plays in Gaelic and the experimental.
So we turned into Barney Cairns. And there, sure enough, up in the corner, was the citizen, having a great confab with himself. And that bloody, mangy mongrel Gary Owen.
Still, to many Dubliners, south of the Liffey is where the action is. Dublin's smartest shops are on Grafton Street. Grafton ends at St. Stephen's Green, the city's landmark park. 22 acres of trees, ponds, fountains, and flowers. Until 1663, this was an open common.
Hey, show them the fish.
This is the green heart of James Joyce's Dublin. Crossing Stevens, that is, my green. Not since Shakespeare has a writer used the English language with such originality as Dublin's most famous son, James Joyce. James Augustine Aloysius Joyce was born at number 14 Brighton Square in Rathgap, south suburban Dublin. His father was a rates collector. This is Sandy Cove on Dublin Bay. Sandy Cove is still a place where Spartan gentlemen bathe in the rough, cold sea. In 1904, Joyce had lived there in this squat stone tower. Today, it's the James Joyce Museum, housing the writer's furniture and mementos. Piano, neckties, guitar. When he was about 30 years old, Joyce courted a young woman named Nora Barnacle. Nora returned Joyce's romantic interest. They went off together to the European continent as self-styled exiles. In time, Joyce and Nora married. Joyce spent much of his time writing books. The going was tough. But Nora stuck with him, even though she wasn't sure what his books were all about. By the time he died in 1941, this sparse, nearsighted man had become a colossus of 20th century literature. James Joyce had not been back to his hometown in over 30 years, yet in all of his works, he had written of nothing but Dublin. To him, Dublin was the dead center of the universe. In the tremendous vitality of his prose, Dublin is the stage upon which the human tragicomedy is acted out. Yes, lived.
Then I ask with my eyes to ask again, yes. Then he asked me would I yes to say yes. And his heart was going like mad, and yes, I said yes, I will, yes.
We sometimes forget that English is not the native language of the Irish people. It was forced on them. In adopting it, they created an Irish English. A rich froth of wit and whimsy tops the conversational flow. The ancestors of these people were bards, poets, storytellers. Today, a storyteller in a pub strikes the same note.
Waver by as the evening poises with a blackbird on its table of hay. Just that. And here and there, a gate.
There are 10,500 of these pubs in the country, one for every 350 citizens. And there's always a grand welcome. Here the gab is as heady as the Guinness. The pub crowd becomes family, and the pub itself a celebration of Ireland. But dear Ireland is more than the bravado of her talk, or a love for dogs. And horses. More than her haunting history, her wild seas, the emerald facets of her landscapes, more than her countryside, so unspoiled, so frankly rural. More than that secret scripture of the poor, the Irish language. It is Ireland's fundamental peopleness, the wonder of simply being a person that so many of us have lost still lingers here. And oh, the dreaming, the dreaming.